know, so.
Are we there? We're there, huh?
Call this special meeting to order. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and the preamble to the Missouri Constitution. We, the people of Missouri, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe and grateful for his goodness, do establish this Constitution for the better government of the state. And if you'll join me in prayer. Lord, thank you for just letting us stop and seek you, helping us to see the direction you want us to go. Lord, we thank you for this community we get to live in. We thank you for the people that we get to represent. We ask your blessing upon our meeting tonight, that we have good discernment and wisdom. In Christ's holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Please call, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Whitus,
Here.
Simmons,
Here.
Akers,
Here.
Gaines,
Here.
Milton,
Here.
C.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight, the special meeting is to deal with appointments. The next item is appointments. The appointment process is in accordance with the board and committee appointments procedure. I am requesting the following appointment to be made for Category 1. Julia King, appointment of Ward 3, Board of Aldermen, to fill the unexpired term of Kevin McConnell until June 6th of 2021 municipal election. Do I have a motion?
Your
So
Honor,
move.
Your Honor, just clarification, it's April 6, 2021,
What did I say?
June.
That's what happened last time, wasn't it?
But we hope that we don't get it extended to June this year.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Acting as you should. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Larry moved and I second.
Thank
All
you.
right. Motion's been made and second. Any discussion?
No, Mr. Mayor, I just appreciate her willingness to serve in times like this where people don't want to serve. I appreciate her wanting to serve. That speaks loads.
And I agree with that.
Well, just to share quickly about the process, we had actually 5 people who sought, which is really encouraging that we had 5 folks in the community that were willing to serve. We ended up interviewing 4 people for the position, and Julia was the recommendation. We had a former mayor and 2 former aldermen on the committee that did the interview process, and she came highly recommended. All right. Any more discussion? Please vote. There are 5 aldermen present. Yes, 5. Larry Milton, yes. Jamie Whitish, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Skanes, yes. Bob Simmons, yes. The result of the vote is 5-0. Do I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Aldermen special meeting?
So move.
Second.
Have a second.
Third.
Please vote.
Is she seated tonight with us?
Nope. Yes, 5 aldermen present. Vote to adjourn. Just as an added comment, the seating for Julia will be in 2 weeks at the regular Board of Aldermen's meeting. She'll now go through the city vetting system of training and getting her information, and she'll join the board officially. I think that's the 25th of August.
Yes, that's.
All right. Well, thank you all. That's the end of the special meeting. We re-adjourn at 6 o'clock for the regular meeting.
How about reconvene? Will that work?
All right. What did I say?
Re-adjourn.
Re-adjourn.
Call this regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order. Begin with a pledge of allegiance. If you're able to stand, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the preamble to the state of Missouri. We, the people of Missouri, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe and grateful for his goodness, do establish this Constitution for the better government of the state. Invocation with Ted Martin.
Good evening. Please join me in prayer. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we invite you in these chambers tonight and bring this agenda before you as discussions are held and the business of the city is completed. We thank you for each of the board members present, for their time, for the community that helps serve as well. And we're thankful for all the city employees, the 200 plus members that provide the services to our residents, our businesses, and our visitors. Father, we love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Whitus.
Here.
Simmons.
Here.
Akers.
Here.
Gaines.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
C.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. This is the public comment section of our meeting tonight. To refresh your memory, if we have several speakers, obviously we have to have some kind of set of decorum. We ask that to give everyone a chance to speak tonight. Would like to ask, if you're speaking on an item, that you keep your comments succinct to the topic and as short as possible. You will be allowed to only speak once on an item, and please do not repeat what has already been said by another speaker. Once public discussion is ended on the item and the board starts their discussion, no additional comments will be taken from the audience. An alderman does have the choice of calling someone back up to clarify or to ask a question. Please remember to speak into the mic, state your name and address for the record, and we do have a 5-minute limit guideline. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Our first speaker is Doug Clark.
Good afternoon, Mr. Clark.
Howdy do. Well, I hate to reiterate on some other things that I've said before, but why I think this is important, especially for me to come up here and at least lay.
Do you need him to put into the record his address?
Yes,
name?
please.
Please, Doug.
121A St. Andrews Street,
Thank
Branson.
you.
So I wanted to reiterate a couple of things here. My main concern about what's going on with the disease, the mask, the test, and everything, there's a lot of information that doesn't basically add up in a lot of cases. And my main concern is the organization that is passing through the rules to everybody here in our country that are not elected individuals, either on the international scale or the World Health Organization is one, the CDC, the Infectious Disease Division, and the CDC. Now, why this is important here, this gentleman here is Brock Chisholm, and everybody ought to do a little research on Brock Chisholm. He was the first director of the World Health Organization. And this is something that really worries me and, makes me want to understand why that we are getting a health system directed by somebody outside the normal parameters of our government. And there's a couple of things that he said that ought to make people sit up and notice. He said, to achieve a world government it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogmas. Another thing that he said, or of the many things that he said in this line, this one here is kind of discerning to me. What basic psychological distortion can be found in every civilization of which we know anything? The only psychological force capable of producing these perversions is morality. Okay? The concept of right and wrong, the only psychological force capable of producing these perversions is morality. The concept of right and wrong. The reinterpretation and eventual eradication of the concept of right and wrong are the belated objectives of nearly all of psychotherapy. Now, why this is important is we're letting a group of psychologists and psychiatrists, which is what the World Health Organization's basic philosophy is to change and basically psychologically manipulate people into doing something controversial to what they would normally do. in order to change our form of government. It's not only that one, it's the environmental policy in the United Nations, which we are involved in here in Branson in our 2030 plan, and we have our school system. And if you want to see the same kind of thinking that's going on here with this medical stuff, just look at the educational structure of UNESCO. They say primarily the same types of things. They want to change, basically they like to eliminate God as our moral structure. You know, the country is formed on our rights that were granted from God. So that should be an important thing for people to consider here. Now, the other thing that I want to bring up, and I don't know whether I'll get it all in here or not, but there's a lot of things that they're doing right now that are misleading in the numbers that they're using to manipulate everybody into this, this emergency that we're having. Now, the main statistical college that did this test that said we were going to have 5.5 million deaths early on was the Imperial College in England, and they basically were using a Fortran programming system to come up with these numbers, and they've been wrong on every disease that they've been involved with forecasting and modeling since they've been doing it. And that's what our system is using and what they've been holding up in front of us to make us believe that we have a crisis here. The other group is Johns Hopkins University. Now, they've been saying that we've been having 1,000 deaths per day in the country. Where this is coming from is actually their own actual records. There's actually about 550 deaths a day currently. And if you look at the normal statistics on deaths, it's not very far off when it normally is when you have a flu season, okay? Now, the other thing that's interesting here, between 2020, about the time the COVID thing hit, they stopped keeping track of the regular flu. Just bang, all of a sudden everything got transferred into the COVID statistics, okay? If you look at the previous 2 years, this year, even with all of the collusion that went on in these numbers, we have less disease and death than we did the previous 2 flu years. Now, that should be something that people would want to check into a little bit. So what I'm getting midst of here is we have a
30 seconds.
Behavior of modification going on here to get us to believe something that really is not factually true, because we're not checking from our position backwards to see who's doing this to us. You know, comes out of the WHO, goes to the CDC, the people that are making the money, making the tests, making the vaccines, they're all in it for the money. And that's my problem with it. I think we're overlooking the research we need to do before we adopt any kind of a plan coming from the federal government or any of these other people that are trying to get us to do all these things that we're doing.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk, do you have anyone else who's signed up?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. That ends the public comment section. Go to the consent agenda. Are there any items that a member of the audience or any of the aldermen would like to be pulled down from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull down item 5, please.
Item 5 has been requested to be pulled down. All right. Any other items? Madam Clerk, item 5 will be put at the top of the regular agenda items. All right. At this point in time, would you please read the consent agenda as amended?
Goodbye.
Aye.
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes of July 16th, 2020 special meeting, July 28th, 2020 special meeting, July 28th, 2020 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of minutes of the Budget and Finance and Capital Improvement Committee joint meeting of June 25th, 2020. Budget and Finance and Capital Improvement Committee joint meeting of July 10th, 2020. Final reading of Bill Number 5838, an ordinance approving the intergovernmental cooperative agreement between the City of Branson Police Department and the Pulaski County, Missouri Sheriff's Office pertaining to the donation of digital LI in-car camera equipment and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5839, an ordinance amending Chapter 94 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining zoning. Final reading of Bill Number 5841, an ordinance approving high-density residential HDR zoning for the property located at 135 Lakefront Drive, Branson, Missouri. Final reading of Bill Number 5842, an ordinance approving high-density residential HDR zoning for the property located at 150 Gunner Hill Lane, Branson, Missouri. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The floor is open for a motion approving the items on the consent agenda as amended.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote on the consent agenda. Five aldermen present, 5 votes yes. Mary Melton, yes. Jamie Whitus, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Skanes, yes. Bob Simmons, yes. Thank you. Then we begin the regular agenda with item number 5. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the information?
Your Honor, this is the final reading of Bill Number 5840, an ordinance approving medium-density residential MDR and neighborhood commercial NC zoning for the properties located at 3855 Fall Creek Road, Branson, Missouri.
I will now open the public hearing. Begin with a staff report from Chris LeBeck. No, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong item. I'm looking at item 8. I apologize. Chris LeBeck.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. I'm going to do my best Joel Hornicle imitation today. I'm standing in for him. As the board's aware from the first read of this item, this is merely the zoning as it relates to this property. This property was annexed by the city. As a part of that annexation, there's what's called an annexation plan of intent, and under Missouri law, the city basically has to respect the zoning of the county when we bring property into the city. It's case law. It's actually involved the city of Baldwin. And as a result of that, that's what the annexation plan of intent articulates, is that the zoning, again, we don't have a unified zoning code here in the Taney County. Our county zoning and our city zoning do not match. So we have to go through a level of effort to try to marry those two things up. In the event that the developer wants to, upon annexation, do something different than what the property was zoned in the county, then we have a process where the property would come in as agricultural, zoned A, and then the developer would apply for whatever the different zoning would be. That's not the case here. Again, just to frame what we're here today for, this is merely the zoning. This has nothing to do with any of the building, the developing, or anything that I think Mr. Ruda has planned for that property. We're just paying respect to the county zoning and making sure that the county zoning marries as close as possible to the city zoning for this piece of property. And staff recommends approval. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions as best I can. I know I'm not Joel Hornicle.
Okay. Alderman Whitus, did you have any comments? Oh, we got to have a motion in a second. I'm sorry. Since this is pulled down, we don't have a regular sheet for it, so I apologize to you. But at this point in time, would accept a motion and a second.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
A second. Now for discussion. Mr. Whitus, would you have any comments you want to make?
I just want to, Ward 3 representation, which is where Country Bluff Estates is located. I just want, we were out there the other day listening to them, and they have had many concerns over a long period of time now. As it was stated, this started out when the property was in the county and the county zoning, and what we need to look at is moving forward after this, and I will be voting to approve this just because everything after this point now will have to come through the city as they do things on that property. So Country Bluff, we're with you. Joel and I heard you, but this is the next step that we need to do. And then, and I think Mr. Root is here tonight too, but one of the things immediately is the storm runoff. And I know concerns were also about Fall Creek Road. And I did some research. The county has started some engineering drawings for doing some things to Fall Creek Road, so that is in the works. So the county was aware of that when they approved this back when it was the county. And then I'm hoping Mr. Ruder's got a plan with like a retention pond. I know that's been discussed before too for that property where the runoff is going into Country Bluff. So hopefully that can be addressed as soon as possible. But like I said, I will be voting to approve this at this time just because that's where we need to go to get this moving. And then everything else from here out will be coming through, like the building codes and stuff, through the city.
All right. From the regular procedure for the regular agenda, is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this issue? Please come forward. If you can.
Good evening. My name is Richard Schott, and I happen to live in Country Bluff Estates. I was the past president this last year of our property owners. I have several things this evening I want to visit just a little bit about. Road concerns certainly is something that, in fact, I talked to the county this afternoon about that, and I won't tell you who I talked to. I'll just tell you that I did talk to the county and one of their representatives. And one of the concerns that we have is the numbers of vehicles, and I'll ask the board as well as the mayor or the alderman, do you know how many vehicles go down that road? And these numbers were taken last April through the 1st of May, 6 days. Do you know how many vehicles on a daily basis go down Fall Creek Road?
We're here for you to share with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't know it, it's 6,196 vehicles a day. That's over 37,000 vehicles, almost 38,000 vehicles that were caught in their information and their data during that 6-day period. In the county, there's only one other road that has more, and it's only by a couple hundred cars a day, and that's Bee Creek. Those are the two largest roads for that type of data for a number of vehicles. But I talked to the county, so the question that I have for the board, because I don't know the numbers, can you give me an idea of the number of units that are being put on that property? Do you have a number to that? You have the business plan, so do you have a number?
Mr. Schott, this is primarily for us to hear your comments.
I understand that. I'm just
But we
asking
haven't
if
seen any
anybody
plans.
remembers a number.
As the alderman shared, we haven't seen any plans yet. This is just the zoning board
I understand
to do the
that.
zoning.
Here's what I'll tell you. The county said that they were told by Mr. Ruda that there was 250 units going into that property. Okay? If that number is different than yours, at least it's different than what Hornickel told us the other evening. But at 250, he said that would be an additional 1,400 cars on that road on a given day. 1,400 more driving vehicles back and forth of numbers on a given day. That does not include commercial property. That only includes the units that are being built on that. If you go to commercial, depends on the kind of commercial that Mr. Ruda decides to put on there. And I'll just use a good example is Dollar Tree or Dollar General or whatever you want to call it. And maybe you throw a couple McDonald's on there or whatever else that they can still dine in, but they can drive through. You're probably talking an additional 1,500 cars based on the numbers that would go through those units. And that's the commercial part of it that we were talking about. My concern is, and the county's concern when I had that visit today was that road cannot handle a 40 to 45% increase over and above what it has currently today. We know that there's been accidents and many accidents on that road. Number one, because there are no shoulders. And number two, it's because you don't have any soft ditches. You have nothing but rock in most cases. I believe that road either has to be widened, and that's all the way from 76 all the way to the other side, which is down, I believe, where they throw the buns. And I'm saying that because if you don't do something like that, especially when you get to our development and into Ruda's property, you're looking at a considerable amount of cars. Now, when you throw a Dollar General in there, I'm going to just throw this out to you, that if you look at where the Dollar Generals are, there's nothing south of 76 in Branson. So where do you think all the people south of 76 in Branson that live are going to go if they need something from Dollar General? They're going to go down there. Our other concern is that I guess you were asked, as much as that our development has a road that goes out. Your past city administrator and I had a visit 5 years ago. At that time, I don't remember his name, I believe Bill or something like that was his first name. We had a talk because our streets were paved 5 years ago, if anybody remembers that. The interesting thing about that is I asked him, why didn't you pave it all the way out to the end? And he said, Richard, I can't, because at that sign, on the interior sign, that's where the city ends, and that's where we own that out to Fall Creek. Now, it's interesting because Mr. Hornickel told me that the city didn't know that they didn't own that we owned it. But yet your city administrator knew that. So I just wanted to throw that out because we had that discussion. The other concern we have is it's okay to take over our road and turn it into an egress-ingress for his commercial property, but it's not okay for anybody to drive up the road to the west side that he plans on developing for his high-end units looking over the lake. He doesn't want anybody driving up there, but it's okay to take over our road for commercial, because that's exactly what's going to happen if we give you that road. We will not get a 2/3 vote from our Country Bluff estates. You will never get that road based on that. And I would suggest that his attorney does not try to sue the city. So, as I'd asked how many units, the 1,400 was based on 250. If it goes to 500 units, add another 1,400 on top of that. Now we're almost doubling the number of vehicles up and down that road. It's almost impossible today for us to drive down our road onto Fall Creek without somebody almost having an accident. That almost happens daily. I know it did to me today, is there was 6 cars coming from the other direction when I wanted to take a right. And there's constantly like that every single day. The last thing I've got is this. I would like a guarantee from the city, the active plan that you're going to approve for this development cannot be altered or changed after it's been approved by this board, by this city board. Once it's in place, it has to be done as is, and there are no more changes. And you know why I want that. I don't think you've got to guess. Because he will come back and he will ask you to change it because he's going to want more commercial property when he can't sell the units that he's trying to put on that property. Just want you to know that. We're not upset with you. In fact, we're with you. We're upset with the fact that we've been in the dark since day one. Back in August, Mr. Mayor, you were there. Some of the other aldermen might have been there. Back in August of last year, we had a meeting as Country Bluff Estates. And Mr. Ruda was there as well. Now, we have nothing against Mr. Ruda, but I'm not certain we're always getting all the correct information when you ask the question. And one of the things that we asked for was a plan in place for this stormwater. I'll tell you that it's flowing 4 and 5 times the amount of water that we used to flow through that street. It's going over our street. It is putting people in danger. We have an older couple that lives down there. It's already starting to affect their home, their foundation. It's affecting their trees. It's washing out trees, and nothing has been done. I realize what he has done. He's put some riprap in there and some other things. That was not a part of the agreement. The agreement is that he would have a plan in place when this was annexed, and it would be a holding pond. And he said it would be less water that would come through than we currently had back in 1718. I guarantee you it's 4 and 5 times the amount of water. Every time we get a 2.5 inch rain, it's over top of our road. So I ask you consider that when you do the voting. I ask that you hold him accountable to what he says his plan is going to be for the number of units and for the commercial property. But please don't ask us anymore about taking our road, and you know why. Thank you.
Right, next speaker.
My name is Cherry Webster. I live at 118 Country Bluff
Sherry, I
Drive.
need you to pull the microphone down.
Sorry.
Thank you.
My name is Cherry Webster. I live at 118 Country Bluff Drive. I'm on lot 33 that butts up against Mr. Ruda's property. The vacant lot adjoining that, lot 34, belongs to my mother, Marie Broughton, for whom I have power of attorney. And then as a point of reference, the next vacant lot down is lot 35, which includes the creek where the culvert overflows, which is opposite the manhole where Mr. Ruda wants to connect to sewer. So I'm here tonight to ask you to vote nay on this because I do not have any confidence that the board, the aldermen have a good plan of attack on how to get through the rest of this development process. And the reason I say that is we've had notification only once of the resolution to annex the property. We never received a resolution on the support that went to the Missouri State for the, supporting low-income housing. We didn't get any notification on the resolution for cost sharing. We got no notification for this bill on its first reading. So we keep getting blindsided. And after the first reading of the resolution back in February, I talked to Joel Hornicle on February 27th, and I specifically asked him, what is the next step after the property gets annexed? And he says they need zoning. It'll go through the Planning Commission, and all the property owners within 175 feet will be notified. So I kept monitoring the Planning Commission agenda to see when is it coming up, when is it coming up, and then boom, resolution for cost sharing comes before you. Blindsided. Then we go to this bill. We got no notification that. Again, we were blindsided. That's why nobody was here last time. So if the staff doesn't know what's going on, how can we feel confident that you know what's going on? The day after the first reading of the resolution to annex, that next morning, Mr. Ruda had backhoes and bulldozers out there just plowing down every tree, and he ran them for the next 14 days straight. And then his hearing came up for the second reading, and what did he do? Oh, he asked for a delay. Why? Does the city have some ordinance that you can't burn 42 acres of trees in the city limits? Because that's what he did for the next 6 to 8 weeks. So I don't know if you guys were snookered, and if you were, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. That's on him. But then when you come up with the resolution for cost sharing, now what's going on? He wants you to pay to put in the sewer and the water. He wants you to take on the zoning that's 14 years old. We have 9 houses that abut against his property and 9 houses across the street that would fall within that 175-foot boundary of notification. And of those 18 households, 1 on the west side was here in 2006 when the county had the hearings, and on the other side, 2. And one of those 2 hasn't lived in the subdivision for 3 or 4 years. He rents the property out. So you've got 15 households that are right there next to his property that haven't had anything to say, and you don't notify anybody. And you've denied us the zoning hearings. As far as I'm concerned, tonight is a zoning hearing. And there's a lot to consider. For example, I can understand in 2008 why they needed to reinstitute his site plan, because the economy was tanking, and it would make sense to renew it for another cycle or 2, but to renew it in perpetuity, and we're looking at it again 14 years later, that's not reasonable. That's not at all reasonable. And I would think that your city attorney ought to be able to come up with something to counteract that. And I don't agree with your characterization that this is merely zoning. And I don't understand, Mr. White Ice, what you mean by you're going to vote yes tonight and then it's going to be in the city. What does that mean? what are you going to do in the city? Because the staff doesn't seem to know some of the things that you might know. For example, last week, when you sent Mr. Milton, Mr. Skanes, I believe you sent someone over because you thought we needed to be heard, and I appreciate that. I appreciate Mr. Whiteice coming to listen to our POA members. But we were told, again, we were blindsided when we were told, oh, we also want to settle the issue about the entrance road, like Richard talked about. And we asked why, because, oh, we're doing the work, with all the other projects that are going on. We just want to clean everything up. I said, no, Joel, there's an ulterior motive. What is it? He said, no, they just want to clean it up because the city is servicing a private road. Yeah, well, about 4 days later, I talked to one of my neighbors, found out what the ulterior motive was. Mr. Ruda wants to sue you for servicing a private road. Well, why didn't Joel Hornickel tell us that? Maybe he didn't know. Did you know? Well, we don't know anything because you don't notify us. You don't give us any information. This plan of intent or planned intent that you're going to attach to the resolution of annexation, why didn't that come up during the 2 hearings on the annexation? I don't recall hearing anything about that. So I don't know if you guys don't know anything and you're just getting snookered step by step in the process, or are you in on the deal from the beginning? Do you know what's going on and you're just not telling people? You come across as either incompetent or crooked. And I would like to hope that you're none of them. But if you don't want to hear our voices, I think you need to hear our voices. There are several reasons issues that I think that are coming up that I don't know that you have made a decision on. And we don't know where you stand. Well, like we don't know where you stand on the entrance road. Are you going to allow Mr. Ruda to have access onto Country Bluff Drive so that he gets an extra access onto Fall Creek Road? And like Richard said, on the danger and the high volume on the road, you need a turn lane, a deceleration lane. That needs another lane width of land because right now you've got a drainage ditch on either side. Where are you going to get that land? Have you asked Mr. Ruda to offer up a lane width of land along his frontage on that road? I think that's something that you ought to consider in the zoning process. Richard mentioned that it's a dangerous road. There are 3 death memorials at Frank Reed Boulevard, up near Cooper Creek, and another one right smack dab beside Mr. Ruda's grand gates. It's a dangerous road. You need some rumble strips down the mid-center yellow line. You need some down the white lines on the side. So that's an issue. Where do the aldermen stand on granting access from the Ruda parcel onto Country Bluff Drive? We don't want it. We have way too many vehicles coming in and out our subdivision as it is. Also, in terms of zoning that was in the county and the zoning that Joel says is proposed now, my understanding is 14 years ago, Mr. Ruda was proposing a world mark-like development, which would be condos that are overnight rentals. Well, what you're asking for now is neighborhood commercial. You're asking for townhouses, for government-subsidized low-income housing. He's asking for single-family detached homes on 4,000 square foot lots. That's a whole different product line, and you haven't held zoning hearings on that product line. Now, Joel, if I understand...
Excuse me just a moment. Let me explain. Tonight, all we're doing, we have to zone the property under a classification. Then, when there are plans presented for building or construct, that's when we have the hearings for you all to be able to see what the plans are. And they will deal with buffer zones, they'll deal with ponding, they'll deal with lots of information. But right now, all we're doing is making, under our code, taking it from the county and putting it under our zoning so that we then have control over what happens there.
Well, I guess I really don't understand what your control process is, because right now, with the stormwater runoff, what I'm getting from your utilities department is that they're only concerned about the sediment control. They're not concerned about water control. And as it was explained to me, the ponds and the gravel dams that are out there now are sediment control. And that in order to put the stormwater management, that won't come in until the whole project is developed. And we need the water control now, not later. And the water retention pond that he has planned up by the townhouses, that'll capture the water up there at the top of that hill. But then on the other side of that sediment pond, you got a whole another hill where the water runs down it. And I don't see him doing anything there.
You're talking about plans that have not been seen yet, ma'am.
And that's one of my points. You haven't seen them because he doesn't want you to see them.
We have to see them. After he's zoned, then if he makes a presentation, we have to see them then.
My concern is that you need to be a little more proactive and strategic with this development project. Because I don't have any confidence. I tell you, I don't have any confidence in the board, and we've got 2 newbies for Ward 3. They don't even know what happened last year. Mr. White Ice was kind enough to come last week, and I think he listened to us, but I'm not sure I feel confident with the process, because it seems like the staff doesn't know what the aldermen know. And we don't know anything. We don't know anything unless we make phone calls, and you don't notify us. Are you going to notify us when the permitting comes in? I mean, he wants you to pay for waive the permitting fees. He wants you to connect to pay the sewer. When do we get to voice our concerns on those issues, if not tonight?
Ma'am, as I explained, this is for zoning only tonight, the property classified. You've said over and over again and repeated yourself a few times, and that's fine. But tonight, all we're doing is the zoning. Then the planning process comes into play, and that's when you have public hearings, public meetings.
By who? Public hearings at the Alderman meeting or this planning commission?
The planning commission will have some meetings, but that has to be approved by this board.
And when will we be notified? Or do we have to keep proactively looking at the agenda for both the planning commission and the aldermen to see when we might be surprised next?
When there's a plan in place, the standard notification will take place.
Well, we weren't notified for this bill. We weren't notified for the resolution
Because
for cost sharing.
There isn't a planning process yet. We don't know. We haven't zoned the property yet.
Well, I'm not sure that you should be accepting the zoning from the county when what he was proposing was overnight condos, and now he's proposing something entirely different. It's a whole different dynamic when you have households with children living there year-round. With overnight condos, they get up and leave after a week or two.
Ma'am, thank you very much for expressing your opinion, please. And we have other people who would like to speak now. Thank you. Who's the next speaker? You want to make a comment?
If everybody's done.
Mr. Simmons.
Chris, I'd like to put you on the spot, but I certainly agree with some of the things that the lady said, and I don't think it's been anybody's fault or anybody's trying to be crooked, but there have things happened that I was not aware of, and certainly I wasn't aware that we were being asked for an entrance onto that road into Country Bluff Estates. I don't recall seeing that at the beginning, and the things we've seen, we've not seen that yet. So we are not aware of that, nor have we approved anything like that. And so I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you just line out what the procedure would be from this point forward so that we understand it and that they understand it?
Yeah, generally.
And that the developer understands it. He's sitting there. If he's in disagreement, let him speak up. Mm-hmm.
Part one is what we're doing here today, which is deciding what the zoning is. Now, what is the zoning? How can that property be used? Now, under this zoning request, we have to basically, as I said before, marry up our zoning to that zoning that was previously accounted for over in the county. Now, I understand that Mr. Ruda, I wasn't around back then, may have made representations about under that zoning what the property would be used for. Okay, that is still the same zoning, whether it was that back then, as to what we are proposing today. So again, that type of a development would still fit under the current zoning here. One observation to make is I heard a comment concerning drive-through restaurants. Somehow this is going to be plopped down in neighborhood commercial. That's part of the zoning request. Drive-through restaurants are not allowed in neighborhood commercial, okay? Again, if that request was made, if that desire was there, that would have to work its way through the Planning and Zoning Commission. So again, once it's zoned, then the opportunity presents itself for what to do with the property, okay? And how are we going to account for some of the concerns that the adjacent property owners have? So those plans would go through the Planning and Development Department, they would be reviewed, and then they would be presented to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission would review those. Again, and this could be done as a whole parcel, it can be done as a part. We saw that with, was it Chateau, where we had property by property by property by property, okay? We prefer to do it kind of all in one shot. But what that does is that gives the Planning Commission an opportunity to look at the development, look at the concerns of the neighbors of the area, the traffic needs, the development needs, and decide if there's any additional constraints that they want to put on the development, okay? And again, I say constraints, but constraints that are permitted under the law. And then that recommendation, good or bad, comes before the board, and then there's another opportunity. That's a public hearing, that's a public opportunity for people to speak and revoice their concerns. Then it comes back before the board again, up here, for final approval and for additional concerns. So again, we're just at the preliminary stage here today, which is trying to make sure that the county zoning marries up to the city zoning so that that process can be started. Now, I don't want to, I think I heard the word snooker anybody. There's no obligation on Mr. Ruda to do anything on this property once it's zoned. I mean, that's crystal clear. He could sit on this property for 20 years if he wanted to, but when he does decide to do something, it's going to have to work its way through those two boards. It's going to also have to work its way through our planning department. And decisions will have to be made, discussions will have to be made to make sure that the use, number one, fits the zoning, and number two, fits that property and doesn't cause any adverse effects on the neighbors.
So you're stating that definitely whatever they do on that property will have to come before planning and zoning. Is that correct?
I hate to do this to you, Alderman.
Well, because 2 weeks ago, that wasn't what I heard.
I hate to do that. It depends. It depends on what the request is, okay?
Okay. I just want to make sure we have it clear.
It depends on what the request is. I mean, you have a gamut from here to here of things that could be done on that property. Again, what's the specific ask? And that's going to determine whether it comes to you directly, whether it goes to the planning department, or whether it goes through the planning commission. But there is opportunities, there are checks and balances throughout the process to make sure that the needs of the community are met.
I'm not sure you answered my question, though. Thank you, but prior to this particular individual thing, and I've sat here for almost 12 years now,
yes, sir.
I thought all of this went before the planning department and planning and zoning, and therefore the proper notifications went out. I've received them myself for years. Anytime anybody around our properties wanting to do things, so I would have answered, if you'd asked me, I would have answered yes. It will definitely, the property owners will be notified, and they will see what's planned on the property, and then the building, planning, zoning, or the building department will approve anything that's on it for building purposes. And that wasn't what I heard 2 weeks ago when we first saw this. I heard that it could go through without any of that.
Yeah, let me clarify that, and that's a valid point.
Please.
Yeah, what we're talking about is the zoning piece of this, okay? Normally, okay, there's two vehicles by which zoning can occur. Normally, zoning would go through the Planning and Zoning Commission, okay? They would review, then they would make the recommendation, it would come back up here. There's also another vehicle under our city code that's not readily used, and that's an annexation plan of intent. And what happens there, this is one of those it depends exceptions, is where it can go straight to the board. Because again, we have case law, we have precedent out there that says that if we have county zoning out there, then that county zoning, we have to basically respect it and marry it up. We're a unique situation here in Taney County. This is what I expressed to you at the last meeting. If I was in Greene County right now, or if we were in Christian County right now, and we annex property in, they have a unified zoning code. So A means A. A in county is A here. Neighborhood commercial in county is neighborhood commercial in the city of Ozark or the city of Republic. So when property is annexed in those situations, in those counties, there's no hearing because it comes in as a matter of default, okay? Because again, of the case law out there that says that we have to respect that. We're in a unique situation in that our county zoning, how a property can be used, doesn't match the city zoning. This is a struggle we've had probably well before your 12 years on the board, Alderman, and it's something we've been hopeful that we could get fixed. And as a result of that, we have to have a vehicle to bring that property in and zone it. So there's two ways to do that. The first is it comes in under a default of agricultural, that's by city code. And in that circumstance, again, we're just talking about zoning here. We're not talking about the planning or the construction or anything out here, just the zoning. Under that capacity, it would go to the planning commission because there would be an application for, it comes as as agricultural, I want something different. Maybe it's not currently zoned in the county. Maybe it's some weird zoning in the county. I want to apply for something different because I want to put some big development there. Whatever the case may be, that's vehicle one. Vehicle two is, I'm happy with the zoning that I have in county, and I'm speaking for the developer here. I don't mean to, but this is what's going on here. What we have in the county is good. We want to keep that zoning, so let's go ahead and move it through on an annexation plan of intent. And that's where our planning department, again, just as to zoning, not to the actual development, just as the zoning says, okay, zoning over here matches zoning here matches zoning here, and that's reflected, I think it's in Exhibit 1 that's attached to the staff report. That's the annexation plan of intent, and that's the zoning that has been come up with to marry back to the county. So that's the one exception to the, I'll say the general rule, that's the it depends, to the general rule that it would normally go through the planning commission. Okay.
And I'm fine with the zoning, and I'm going to vote for this tonight because it is the zoning. However, I think what these people are concerned about, and what I was kind of shocked about to hear 2 weeks ago, was that they're concerned about what happens next. Where do they get input on access roads and drainage and et cetera? And what is going to go on that property? And what I heard 2 weeks ago at the last meeting was that they possibly wouldn't get to see any of that, because if they go strictly under what's allowed on those zoning areas, then it wouldn't go through planning and zoning, and it wouldn't come through here.
So I'll speak very generally on this again, because again, there's a number, and I hate to go down to the weeds and say.
I know I've got you on a rabbit trail, but I think it's important in this case because we have all been slightly confused on this.
And as a property owner myself in the city of Springfield, and I live right on National, I can relate to this, okay, is support actions. So support to the development, there most of the times isn't any requirement for notification, okay? Just generally. So support action meaning roads, meaning things of that nature. Now there's a issue there with that road and some other ancillary matters, but generally under our code, those don't require notification, okay? It's only when it, gosh, you really are putting me down a rabbit hole, Alderman, and this is hard because I don't want to misstate something because I want to be fair to the Country Bluff. If there's an opportunity for notification, if the plan or if the item that comes before the board or the planning commission requires notification, the city sends out notification. Let's keep it as general as that. But there are situations where notification is not required under state law. Okay? So again, it's going to be hard on some of these things. There's some passion here, there's some frustration here. I get that. And maybe the city should go through the extra mile, you know, even though we have no legal obligation to do so, to make Country Bluff aware that this stuff's going on. Because again, it's out of fairness to them, because this property's been snaked through this. And I'll speak for Mr. Hornicle. Stan just walked to the mic. I have no doubt he'd probably be willing to accommodate that in this circumstance.
Well, before Stan speaks, I would like to say that I feel that we in our not fully understanding this have caused them to think that we're not trying to represent them properly. And that's certainly not been our intent. It's certainly been our concern all along that we have an established, nice subdivision, and we have something new moving next to it, and we want them to be compatible.
Yeah, the clearest, and I don't mean to cut you off, Alderman, but I think the clearest point where they're going to have that opportunity is the subdivision process. We bring a block of property in. Okay, now we want to divide it into something. Okay, this is where that opportunity arises itself. What happens there? Let's just talk about the big meat of this. Number one, it goes to the Planning Commission. There's public hearings, there's notification. Number two, it's going to go to the Board of Aldermen. The subdivision items that I'm laying out for you, road layouts, parcel layouts, basically extensions of public infrastructure, those are the things that don't require notification. But the moment we start subdividing that property out to accommodate whatever ideas that Mr. Ruda has, that's where we start getting that notice. Okay, hopefully that helps kind of clarify some of this for you. But again, there's a goal there, because again, if you start subdividing just a block of property into something more specific, what's going to happen? There's ancillary effects to the property owners around it. That's why there's a notice opportunity there.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not against this project at all. We want this project. I think something's good for our area. I think the developer has made a major concession in moving it from one side to the other side, away from the subdivision there. So I think it's a good property. I don't think that we're going to cause the problems we're foreseeing, but I certainly understand why these people want us to say that in black and white. Why they want to know that they would have control if something beyond what was said happens there. And I do understand that most of the property will not be to that stage of a plot for quite some time probably. Right now, they're trying, I assume, to just get the original development on there, which has a time frame on it and needs to be completed. So,
and I'll tell you honestly, what's probably caught everybody off guard is we've never done an annexation plan of intent before. This is brand new.
Yeah, and
and again, we're dealing with
the wrong conception is this hasn't happened since I've been on the board, and we've been around the city for 60 years. So,
and we're dealing with a piece of property that arguably is right now under a cloud. You know, a cloud of frustration, I guess, is the best way to describe it. So, again, they want to follow this process. They've chosen path A versus path B. You know, we have to accommodate that under the precedent out there. And again, just as to zoning, but, you know, subdivision, the public hearings, every public hearing is going to require notice. When we're talking about the subdivision process, public infrastructure, things like that, there may be some exceptions. You know, some of those, it depends, and that's an attorney word I hate. But again, we're going to try to accommodate this as best as we can. We don't know what Mr. Ruda's plans are. In all seriousness, he has no obligation to tell us whether he wants to put what there. We still have to approve it, you know, but he doesn't have any legal obligation to let.
Just like anyone else.
Just like anyone else. I could go right now and go buy Andy Williams' old theater, and maybe I have a grand idea of raising it and putting a racetrack there. I don't have to tell anybody that. I don't have to tell somebody.
Don't tear down that unique building there.
I understand, but I'm just making a point here that I don't have to tell anybody that till I come to the city and start asking about building permits and about subdivision and all the ancillary things that would go with that development.
Mr. Dobbins, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I just wanted to clear up the comments on the road. The initial plan, which was just a drawing, a conceptual drawing, showed a road connecting this property to the Country Bluff Road. The minute I saw that, I said, no, we're not doing that because that road was never designed to handle any more traffic than what it is already handling. What I did agree to, and what Mr. Root and I, who have had a couple of very intense conversations on, was that I would work with the county to try to get the road widened. In my opinion, I completely agree, Fall Creek needs a complete redo. It unfortunately is not in the control of the city, it is in the control of the county. The county has agreed. One of their commissioners, they are working, getting the designs done right now, their director of roads, getting an engineer's design done to put in that turn lane for Country Bluff, as well as the route of property and deceleration lanes for those properties. It's still in the design phase. It's still got to go through their system, but they're moving forward with that at my request. The road was never going to be cut through to Country Bluff. That's why you all don't really know a whole lot about it, because it never got past my point of review.
Good. Thank you. I didn't mean to make you wait.
That's quite all right.
Any other comments from Alderman?
Yes. I really understand your frustration, Cherry and Richard. As I recall, when this was first brought up, and we were talking about approving a parcel for the low-income housing and the annexation, I know Country Bluff had a lot of questions. And I'm embarrassed to sit here and say I was one of the ones who told you all that that was not the time for these discussions, because in my opinion it wasn't, that you would have plenty of opportunity to raise all your valid concerns during the planning and zoning process. I hear Chris say that we need to follow precedents. And in the same breath, he says, this is the first time we've ever done an annexation plan of intent. You hear Alderman up here saying, yes, I'm going to vote on this tonight, but I don't understand A, B, C, D, and E. This is the final approval for planning and for zoning this property. I don't know when you'll have a chance to talk, quite honestly. Because if it doesn't go through planning and zoning again, when do you get a chance to share your opinions? Obviously, if this had gone through planning and zoning, you would have been able to discuss things like the traffic, the stormwater, ingress, egress. That's when you have those conversations. So now you're facing a board that sounds like is going to approve this as for the final reading with a lot of unanswered questions. I know I have unanswered questions. I agree with Alderman Simmons. This is the first time I ever heard about connecting a road to Country Bluff. Chris mentioned maybe we should go the extra mile because this is unique as far as issuing notices and that. If it doesn't, if we're circumventing planning and zoning, in my opinion, that does not mean we circumvent telling the neighbors what's going on with the properties. Through the planning process, I know I think Joel said he was sending out notifications. Chris says this is part one, it's zoning. Chris says that if a drive-through, if Mr. Ruda comes back and says he wants to put in a drive-through, then that would have to work its way through planning and zoning. Well, I'm sitting here questioning, is that true?
Well, that's incorrect, Alderman.
Okay.
The statement that I made was that the request for zoning is for neighborhood commercial. A drive-through is not allowed in neighborhood commercial.
Right.
So when that does come through Planning and Zoning Commission, that would be denied, okay? The other
But
key-
what if it didn't go through planning and zoning? What if they used the annexation plan of intent?
The annexation plan of intent is one document. It simply addresses the zoning, no more. It establishes two frames of zoning. It establishes neighborhood commercial and medium-density residential. It does nothing else. That's all it does. So the things that you're talking about, the concerns about the roads and the whatnot, the valid concerns that these people have, those will be dealt with during the public hearings, during the actual planning process and the subdivision process of these parcels. Again, what we are doing here tonight, just want to be clear so that we're all on the same page here. The zoning process is no different tonight than what would happen with regards to the Planning Commission. I'm looking at Alderman Skanes because he's been through this a number of rodeos. The discussion at this, if this was in front of the Planning Commission as to zoning, is just to zoning. It has nothing to do with any of these ancillary issues. That's all the discussion is framed around.
But during a zoning process, don't they discuss ingress, egress? Don't they discuss?
No,
No,
No.
just zone the property.
Just zone it.
So right now, if
Again,
if Dan's plans for the neighborhood commercial, if he goes to build things that conform to our neighborhood commercial zoning, he won't be back in front of us because it's already been zoned neighborhood commercial.
That's not necessarily accurate.
Okay,
It's still going to have to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval and review of those plans. A good example, and I'm thinking, because I just had lunch there today.
But that's a plan approval, not
Hold
a
on.
zoning issue.
Hold on, no, it's not. They're independent. Planning and Zoning Commission, that's two different things going
Right.
on there. Okay, we're just dealing with the zoning piece.
I'm just trying to find out when they can have a time to speak on this thing because they haven't been given one.
As I said, this is part one. Once we get to the point and Mr. Ruda decides to do, if he decides to do anything with this property at this point, it's going to have to come back before the process and there will be an opportunity for people to be heard. You know, the bottom line is zoning only dictates the allowable uses and their developmental standards, the standards by which a property is developed. That's it. There still has to be that planning process, those decisions made as to whether or not that complies, whether or not that is correct.
Any other alderman have anything?
I'm not convinced Country Bluff Estate property owners are going to have a chance to voice their concerns before it's all too late.
If this property is subdivided, which I have no doubt it needs to be to accomplish what Mr. Ruda wants to do, there's going to be public hearings, there's going to be an opportunity to speak and an opportunity to be heard. That's a requirement under our city code, and that's a requirement under the law.
Well, planning and zoning was required. This is the first time ever, right? This annexation plan of intent has ever been used.
But it's allowed under the law.
could I explain that? We don't know why, but a Board of Aldermen put this in our ordinance. I know it wasn't you all, but they did it. So it is the current law. You have the opportunity to change that later. You can't change it now. Again, this happened years back. I could not even speculate how it got in there this way, but it's how they did it. And Mr. Ruda and his attorney found that cutout in our ordinance, and therefore it has to be brought forward to you. Otherwise, we are not doing our job.
Well, I don't think we're doing our job by not representing Country Bluff. So I know the board's going to approve this. I will vote no. I know the board's going to approve this, and I apologize to Country Bluff for standing up here and lying, telling you you're going to have your day. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
That's not true. Anything he said there is not true. We're talking about one issue, and that's zoning. And after that's done and he submits his plans, then that's when they have opportunity to go back in front of P&Z and the process works. How this got so convoluted, I have no idea. It is simply one thing. We're going to zone it. It is a mess between what the county's got and what we got. We didn't write this ordinance, but we've got to live with it, and we're not lying to you. I'm the one who came up in the issue last time and said I was really concerned that you guys weren't here at all. But that's why we asked for these people to come back through this process right now. Nobody up here is trying to do anything, including Larry, but it's misrepresenting to you that you're not going to have an opportunity to do something because, by golly, I'll make sure it happens.
I'm sorry, we can't have people speak. It's a public meeting. It has to be invited. Anyone want to invite Richard back up to the podium?
I'd like
If
to invite
Richard's
Richard.
bringing ribs tonight, yeah, he can do that.
Richard, I have to follow procedure.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alderman. The only thing I've got is this, and we understand it's zoning this evening. We don't have an issue with the zoning part of this thing. As I mentioned earlier, my concern is the planning part of this thing, which is going to come later. My question to you, Mr. Chris, right? Chris? Yes. Chris, is how soon does the planning have to be completed?
How soon?
Yes. There's no time limit? But I'm guessing that Mr. Ruda wants to get it done as soon as possible. Is that correct? So he can move on?
What I will tell you, just so the board can hear too, based on what's been presented in previous meetings, based on the fact that there is grant money involved with this, I think there is time limits with regards to getting this development up off the ground if he decides to go down this path. As a result of that, it will be pretty readily. Now, if that project's abandoned, that's a different story, okay?
So what I said earlier was this, is that with the plan part of it, once that's in place for the land, and I hope it doesn't drag out 15 years, as far as 10 years from now, all at once, because he wasn't able to sell certain housing type development, whether it was one story, two story, whatever, that now he wants to add more commercial. So our concern is that when will we ever know exactly what's going to go on that land? And at some point in time, does he say, well, now I'm going to make 50% of it commercial? I mean, I'm talking the neighborhood commercial part. And I understand the drive-through. I knew that before. I just said the wrong names of the wrong restaurants. Sit-in, eat-in restaurants. I understand that. But my point is that doesn't alleviate the fact of how many extra people are going to be driving on that road in our area. And it's already almost impossible to get onto Fall Creek off of our road. And I know you understand that. But I asked you this earlier. I said, I would like that you could guarantee us that the active plan, and I'm talking about the plan, that you will stand up for us and it cannot be altered once it has been given to you. I asked you that earlier. I'm hoping at some point in the future that you can say, something, Ruda, you build it as you said you were going to build it, or you don't build it at all. Because I don't want to see more commercial out there.
Richard, thank you. I'll just share with you that we will follow, and I know that Jamie has made a commitment. We have a new older person who's going to be coming on the board who will make a commitment to their ward. We got a Ward 3, and you got 2 aldermen that serve in that Ward 3. And their primary focus is Ward 3. I will say to you that we cannot make any guarantees because we can't obligate future boards. All we can do is a short term based on it. There's no way for government to do that. But we do have procedures and we have our guidelines that are there, and they will be followed. And we will make sure you're communicated with. That's it. Ma'am, I'm sorry, unless someone calls back up.
I'd like to ask Sherry to come back up, please. Cherry or Sherry? Cherry.
CH?
Cherry like the pie, Webster like the dictionary. Okay, so you say, Mr. Milton, that we'll be able to comment in planning and zoning, but then I thought I heard, I'm sorry, it's Chris. I thought I heard him explain that there are some portions that you don't get notified on, that when the subdivision plans start to come up, we'll be able to comment. But before the subdivision starts coming up, I have a real concern about the sewer connection. And when do I get to talk about that? Because there's a big issue about how he's going to handle, or how you're going to handle easements to connect the sewer. Because he's going to have to come through my property, either lot 33 or lot 34, or he's got to go through lot 35. And your utility director has explained it to me that because they want to do gravity flow, the deeper it goes, the wider the easement. And he has recommended 20-foot wide easements. Well, by right, the plats in our subdivision only have 5 feet on either side of the property line for 10 feet. Mr. Ruta's engineer has already contacted me about granting an extra 15 feet on lot 34, plus the 5 feet on 33, which is going to come right down the middle of my side yard, my lawn. And he didn't ask to go down the other side of lot 34. And Mr. Ray says the best spot is for him to go right down lot 35. So you're starting to, now you've got to get into, well, and then Mr. Ruta has asked you to put in the sewer connections and the water connections for him. So who is going to take on the responsibility of negotiating easements? Is it going to be Mr. Ruta? Is it going to be the city? And if you can't get an easement from one of those 3 lots, Mr. Ray explained to me his option is to build a pump station and pump it up the hill into his own facility, or maybe cross the Nevins property, which he needed an easement for, and tap into the Woodlands pump station. So my question is, are you going to abide by Mr. Ray's recommendation of 20 feet? Are you going to override him and let Mr. Ruta go with the 10-foot by right, and he can pick whichever lot line he wants to go through? Are you going to condemn my property so that you can get your 20-foot easement? When do I get to talk about that? That doesn't sound like subdivision planning and zoning hearings.
Ma'am, tonight we're doing one thing. There will be a process where the sewer plan, the issues will be brought forward for public.
And we'll be notified, and we'll have a public
I
hearing
don't know
on
exactly
that?
where you live, ma'am. I've heard you talk about the lots, but I don't know. Yes. Yes.
Bottom line is the subdivision process includes comment, which also includes, under our city code, sewer connections. So that's all part of this subdivision process. Okay, I just want to make sure that that's clear, because I hear her concerns. I'm not trying to short circuit this meeting today, because again, we're just about zoning. But again, there's a point in which these things will be addressed. Tonight is not the night, because again, we're just dealing with the zoning standards.
So, Chris, what I'm hearing you say, I
Mr.
think,
Milton? Yes. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Chris, what I'm hearing you say is, I know it's been annexed. I know we're about to do a final read on the zoning. Does the city have any obligation to this property to provide it sewer, which would put the city in a position of having to eminent domain?
I don't understand what you mean by eminent domain. As far as an obligation to provide sewer?
Yes.
Yes. Annexation, there's a sewer requirement. If we don't provide utilities to the property, Mr. Ruta can pull this back into the county within 5 years, and then we're stuck in a big mess.
So the city will be obligated to provide this 20-foot easement for the...
No, you're confusing it again, okay? The city has an obligation to provide sewer. That's going to be a part of the subdivision process. How that gets there, that's just one of many opportunities there, okay? Again, these are all conversations. These are all things that are addressed during the planning, the building, and that process. These are not things that are addressed tonight. I don't know how else to say that, Alderman. We're talking about zoning tonight.
So with the zoning, the city would not have the obligation to provide sewer.
With the annexation, yes. And if the city does not provide sewer to the property, then Mr. Ruda, within the next 5 years, can petition to de-annex the property from the city. Then it goes back to the county, and then we're back to square one. And then to Alderman Whitus's point at the beginning of this, then the city loses the control and the ability to kind of drive how this development is going to look. That's the key point here. We can't do anything till it's zoned. We can't do anything until it comes for those plans for the subdivision. We have to get there. To get there, we have to go through zoning. And this is one of two ways. I'm sorry that this is a new and novel approach to do this, but again, it's in our city code. It is what it is.
Any additional comments? Please vote. Yes, 4, no, 1. Larry Milton, no. Jamie Whitish, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Skeens, yes. Bob Simmons, yes. Passes 4-1. Thank you. Now we're ready to move on to item number 8. Madam Clerk, would you please do the first reading?
Your Honor, this is the public hearing and first reading of Bill Number 5843, an ordinance establishing the annual levy of a property tax for general revenue in the city of Branson, Missouri, a city of fourth class.
Begin with a staff report from Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. Tonight we have the annual tax levy that will be collected in 2021. The rate that was published in the paper was .6277. And we published that, and that was prior to the Board of Equalization numbers. Since then, we received them actually last night around 4:30. So you will be seeing the actual numbers, and I know that there had been concern about the property tax levy rate going up. That is, actually, it's going down this year. Last year's was .6077. The final numbers will be .5688. But we have to publish that in the paper because it can go down, but whatever we present at the public hearing, we can't go over that. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of information on that. We did calculate it, we did check those numbers, and after the Board of Equalization numbers were presented to us, that's what you will see. However, tonight we're asking for approval of the published rate, and anything less than that will be great. I believe, and we can check with Lisa on this, but I believe we'd have to do a substitution bill or something like that to get the final rates in before the next reading. Is that correct?
No, actually, there's just your levy amount is in this ordinance, and that we just have to be amended.
Just change it.
Because
Okay.
it's going down, is my understanding.
Sure, it is. It's going quite a bit
As
down.
long as it's going down.
Sure.
That's all you have to do.
Well, there you go.
Jamie, what was the number it's going?
The new number will be .5688. And I did the calculation on a $150,000 home. The difference from last year to this year will be about a $58 savings. So.
All right. At this time, take public comments. Anyone from the audience wish to comment on taxes going down?
Do we need to amend, do we need to amend this?
Can I make a comment before, so there's not a confusion? We are actually having a public hearing on the 0.6277 as written in the ordinance. And so that's what you're voting on tonight and having a public hearing on right now.
And then we will have to reduce it to the 568. We'll have to have some action taken. All right.
Excuse me, Mayor.
We'll correct it.
Would we amend this to the .5688 before we approved it?
No, because what she shared about, it has to be published, so it has to be a matter of public.
What we published in the paper was .6277, and that's what we're talking about tonight. When we bring it back for final reading is when we will amend it with the final and actual numbers.
And the reason she's correct, because it was published at that, so you're having a public hearing on the published notice, and that's why it's being done that way.
Okay, was this being suggested for a double read tonight? No?
No, and you
And it
wouldn't
won't
want to
help.
because it's a levy
Yeah,
and you
okay.
have a public hearing. So it's at point
277.
6277 is the hearing on that.
So we're going to vote to approve the 6.277. When it comes back for the second reading is when we'll amend it to the .5688.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Anyone, any of the audience wish to speak? Any alderman additional? Public hearing is now closed. Oh, excuse me.
I'm sorry, could you just remind us why we do it this way? Because it's not apparent if you're just sitting out there looking at it for the first time. But the way I understand it is there's a time limit on when we have to have this done. And very seldom is all the information in from the county due to the timeframes that they have for us to be able to solidly do it after everything is done. So we have to go ahead and get this in now and then change it so that we can meet our time frame with the state. Is that?
That's very well said. I don't need to say much more because you explained it very well. So we get the beginning numbers. We get them late in July, and we have a turnaround time, and then we have 10 days for it to be published in the paper. And then it has to go to the Board of Equalization, and we publish the paper rates for the pre-Board of Equalization decision, and then it has to go to the state auditor for approval, and then they send it back to us, and there's a very small window of time, and that's why we have done it this way, but you said it very well.
All right, you've heard the first reading of bill number 5843. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak additional to this matter? Please vote. I did. I think I said the public meeting is now closed, did I not? Yeah. I marked it anyway that I did. Yes, five aldermen present. Approved. Larry Milton, yes. Jamie Whitus, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Skanes, yes. Bob Simmons, yes. All righty, ready to go on to item number 9.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5844, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Resource X for access to online fiscal health and priority-based budgeting computer applications.
All right. Begin with staff report from Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This is a renewal of basically our budgeting software, priority-based budgeting, and our fiscal health tool. And after this renewal, we'll have one renewal left, and then we'll have to go back out.
Recommend. You've heard the first reading of Bill 5844. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any aldermen? All right. Please vote. Yes, five present. Approved. Larry Melton, yes. Jamie Whitish, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Skanes, yes. And Bob Simmons, yes. Madam Clerk, please introduce us to item number 10.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5845, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of Section 354 and 355 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to notice inviting bids and bid opening procedure.
Staff report from Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. We are asking to update the code so that we can include electronic bidding to our code for bidding purposes. A couple of things for the reason, one of the reasons why we chose to do this is, I'll give you a quick example. During COVID, we had some bid openings coming in, and we were literally having to do them outside in the rain at the picnic table. So we quickly realized the need to update the code to include and be able to conduct our business more remotely. And it will, one, save us money. It'll, two, improve our procedures and our solicitation methods, and it'll allow us to have easier communication. And what we're planning on doing is, if you will all approve of these changes tonight, what we would like to do is, after the second reading, just do a 60-day process. We'll get the letters out to all of the vendors, and that's on our list, and we will do simultaneously so that there's no drop in communication and everybody knows the platform that we're trying to go for. I will mention that this same platform, the e-bidding platform, comes to Springfield, Independence, Columbia, Lee Summit, and Kansas City all have the e-bidding platform. And our new purchasing agent, he's been with us for almost a year now, so, but he has reached out to all of them and talked to all of them, and he worked with Chris really closely on this, so we are happy with what we're presenting before you tonight, and we ask approval of this. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. You've heard the first reading of Bill 5845. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Is there a second? Yes. Anyone in the audience wishing to address this item? Okay. Any of the aldermen wishing to?
It's about time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
so Jamie, could you go over the
Yes.
bid opening procedure?
For the new process? Yeah, so they'll have the option, they can either mail it in, or they'll be able to send it in on electronic bidding. And this electronic bidding will be opening, and it'll be designated by the purchasing agent. And it'll be, Chris, can you help me out here as far as on the electronic purchasing opening? It'll go through, we already have an electronic platform, Demand Star, to where they go through and send in the bids. As far as the opening process goes, are you more familiar?
There's an opportunity to do that there. So again, this gives the flexibility to do that as well, okay? So again, the whole goal here, and I think we've heard this before, is to open the bidding up to more vendors. The more vendors keeps the cost down. Like basically allowing the subscription service to log on, sign up, we're going to reach a wider swath of potential businesses. So again, that's the end goal here. And also cut down on some of the costs that we spend. I mean, we send out notices on a list, and I forget what the amount was, but it's substantial, and we're trying to pinch pennies anywhere we can, and this is substantially less money to do it this way.
Thank you. And it's a minimum of $8,000 a year savings, but the opening is an electronic. And I'm sorry that Ryan's not here tonight. He has to stay at home. But they already do bid openings through Demand Star. They already are allowed to look at those and those kind of things, and that's an electronic platform too. And if you would like, I can certainly get you more information about that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Absolutely, no problem.
Alderman Simmons.
Two things. Do you anticipate that you could lose some smaller bidders in this, that they would not want to learn a new process? Have you had any complaints about that? All of these cities that you've mentioned are 10 or 50 times bigger than we are. Have you had anything from contractors that may not be comfortable with this process?
No, and that is one of the questions that I have asked our purchasing agent, and we haven't. And I think one of the reasons, if we get some more complaints after we send out the letters and stuff, we'll certainly take that into consideration. But that's one of the reasons why he allowed the mail-in and the electronic bids. But I don't see that would be a big problem for us.
Well, I think it would solve itself over time.
Yeah.
But we do take quite a few smaller bids, and they're not all giant contractors that are set up to handle.
And after talking to I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
After talking to some of the other cities, I think it's going to bring in a more competitive and a wider bidder field. And if you've noticed over the last several years, we've kind of done it older ways, and so we've started to lose some. So there will be some bids that we don't even get bidders on and those kind of things. And what we're hoping is to open that field up so we don't have that issue again. But certainly we're going to watch out for that because we did not want to eliminate the smaller bidders, certainly not.
Mr. Mayor. Number two, and I'm sure this has been solved because of the larger people using it, but how does this meet the public opening requirement? A public opening means that anybody can be there and you can see when you open the bids, and that's what the bids are. It's a check and balance. How does the electronic bidding, how does that ensure that?
The electronic bidding. Chris, did you want to speak on that?
Well, Real quick, at this time, I think there's a misstatement there. There's no plans to use Demand Star for the bid opening portion at this point. So there's still going to be that public opening of the bids, okay? Because again, you're right, there is a check and balance there. That opportunity is there. That vehicle is available if we so decide to bring it online. So again, the goal right now is to basically give a sign-up platform, a way to distribute the information out to prospective bidders. That's the intent right now. That's what the code modifications are for, okay? You're talking about another piece of the puzzle that we'll hopefully bring online at some point. Another piece of that is e-signatures, things of that nature. You know, COVID has caused us to have to change our entire way of thinking in the city. And to your previous question, Alderman, I wanted to chime in on that. The success of CitizenServe and the planning department, I think that's our showing that this can work for the smaller businesses. I mean, that has been widely adopted, and I think a lot of that testaments to the people that work in that department and the training in that. I have no doubt we're going to see that same going on in the
Thank you, good point.
finance department.
Is there any other alderman wishing to speak to this? Yes.
Jamie, to keep full transparency,
Sure.
would we also, in addition to this, would we still run it in the newspaper, the notice?
The intent was not to run it in the newspaper. That's where some of our cost savings would come from. And that's one of the changes that were made. That was our intent. I will tell you that.
I would think, following up on Alderman Simmons' questions, I would think that, and I don't know what the cost is to publish that, but the trade-off of that cost of allowing everybody to see, I think that would be a worthy trade-off.
Do you think more people read the paper than would be an electronic platform?
I think there are some people. Because the system, I don't want to get into the weeds for sure.
Sure, no problem.
Because people have to sign up to get onto this.
Yeah, there will be a process of which we'll take them through.
So if we had a
certainly.
bid, even a small bid, and somebody hasn't signed up, they're not going to get a notification of this, where if it was published in the paper, at least they'll have an opportunity.
Well, what happens now is they call into our office and want to be put on a list. And what we then do is we send them, we put them on a list, we get all of their information, and then we send that out to them. And so included in that information will be their email address as well. So, I mean, I would think that we would also send them an email with the bid as well. But I'm open to suggestions, certainly. This is what we're bringing this for you tonight.
Jamie, can I chime in on that?
Yeah,
too?
please do so.
I think there's a misconception that somehow that this information's behind a sign-up wall. The actual bids are would be sitting on our website.
Sure.
So anybody could walk onto the website, see what's out there and available to be quote-unquote bid on. And then if they wanted to go that extra step, they could go into the system, get further information about it, then go forth with whatever decision they want to make
Sure.
on that process. Again, this is not something, we're not trying to bring some new and novel approach on here. This is standard practice in a significant number of jurisdictions in the United States. Demand Star is just one product that can be used. So again, that's the practice. If you go to a lot of the municipalities in the city of St. Louis or St. Louis County, they use some sort of form or fashion of this as well.
Mr. Simmons? Oh, I'm sorry, were you not finished?
Yeah, I just had another
I'm sorry.
quick question. So Jamie, when I did the math, it says we sent out 77 packets at $75 each. But then it said we had a cost of $81.20 for 77 packets, which is $105. It's about $30 more per packet. Is that extra for the additional mailing and the addendums?
Yes, we put little notes down there at the bottom that said it didn't include the initial bid package and stuff like that. Yes, sir.
But how about under financial impact? Hey, an $8,000 savings is an $8,000 savings.
Right, a dollar's a dollar. So.
In this world, it should be a positive impact.
Yes, and 8,000 is only the start. So I think as we move more into electronic bidding and electronic signatures and those things, you'll start to see improvements there as well, certainly.
All right. Alderman Simmons.
That just brought up one more question. Is there a fee for the contractors to sign up to be on this system?
We have not discussed any fees. No, sir, that's not our intent.
I know some of the larger cities, you do have to pay to get onto their system.
For Demand Star, and as Chris had said, you know, that wasn't the intent, but for Demand Star, I know that they have to have a subscription. So I do believe that even the larger companies have to pay for a subscription for Demand Star. But Demand Star wouldn't just be ours, it would be, they're getting a subscription to be able to see lots of other bids out there.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Please vote. Yes, 5. 5 present. Larry Melton, yes. Jamie Whitish, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Skanes, yes. And Bob Simmons, yes. I don't just like to hear my voice. I have to read those for it to go into the record. So I apologize to you for this process that we do, but we got to do it that way. All right, ready to move on to item 11. Madam Clerk.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5846, an ordinance approving the contract for the expenditure from the city's tourism tax contingency fund to the Branson Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitors Bureau, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
I'm sorry, Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. We did have a request from the Chamber and the CVB, and they submitted an application for our contingency marketing dollars in the amount of $75,000 for their marketing project. And I will say this did go to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee had some discussion on it, and there was some concern about the $75,000 being the full amount of the package that they're looking at. However, the Finance Committee did approve it to come to the board for further discussion. And I believe that we have Jonas here tonight to answer any more questions, but I'd be happy to do what I can. Thanks.
You've heard the first reading of Bill 5846. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any aldermen wishing to speak to this matter?
I'd like to hear something from the Chamber/CVB about this to explain a little bit more for the people that are in here that haven't heard much about it yet.
I'm sorry, Rachel.
Fogging up here, Jonas. It's hard to see you.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, as all of you know, we cannot go back and
Sorry,
read.
I have to have your name. And
Oh, I'm sorry. When you asked me to speak, I
Who
thought
are
I'd have
you?
to say Rachel Wood, 2100 or 4100 Gretna Road, Branson, and I'm with the Branson CV. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. So as all of you know, we cannot go back and relaunch our previously planned marketing efforts. Everything looks different today than it did before. So therefore, we've had to ask ourselves, what's next and what can we do that's really new and cutting edge in the marketing space to really up our game over the next 18 months. That brings us to where we are now. We're requesting contingency funds to hire a need-based behavior science company that specializes in observing, cataloging, and translating human behavior into actionable consumer insights. From these insights will be developed specific personas that will provide the community with a new tool that allows us to market the right content to the right people at the right time and place. So we're calling this project 2021. So the idea is to do what we can now for 2020 to really elevate ourselves for 2021. So these personas will be used by the Branson Chamber and CVB, but also provided to all businesses in order to more efficiently spend marketing dollars and drive new visitation. The exciting thing is that the program is very scalable and can be used by businesses that have very small marketing budgets, all the way up to those drivers with larger budgets. So as we analyze these personas, we will have the ability to build lookalike audiences. So what does that mean? In a presentation back in June at the Board of Aldermen work study session, we presented our new community dashboard. It had links in it to real-time data that anyone in the community can view on our website portal at any time in real time. We discussed then that we have been using cell phone data the last several years to understand our visitor numbers and our DMA. This new program will also add an additional overlay to those cell phone pings that analyzes consumer behavior data. This information that is further gathered, this information, is gathered by showing what apps each individual person is using on their phone, what content they're engaging in, what type of message they are responding to. And from there, what we can do is we can go and find, say Sally comes to Branson every year and she's 34, she has 2 kids, she's always on Pinterest, she's always on, these 5 different apps, and then we can see Monica across the street who has all of those same similar behavior patterns, but yet has never been to Branson before. So we can create those lookalike audiences and really not only hit our previous visitor, but as we've talked about for years, how do we drive future new visitation? This is a really good opportunity for us to do so. So the granular data is very shocking when you really look at this, and I think a really good example that we have is I could tell you how many boats were on Table Rock Lake 4th of July weekend. And then from there, I could tell you how many people and who those people were based on device behavior. I can tell you how many of those owned a boat and how many of those were on Table Rock Lake that didn't own a boat. And we could go after those that did own a boat if you were a business that wanted to upgrade them to a new boat. If you were a business that wanted to sell them a boat, you would know who that available target audience would be. So for us, time is really of the essence here. The sooner we can receive this data, the quicker that we can use it for our fall campaigns. So, as we kind of sit right now, we are developing our fall campaigns now. If we had this information, it would be really helpful for us to move forward. Other than that, we're going to be looking at probably Christmas. So any questions? I know that's a lot of information, but I wanted to kind of, I felt like the board didn't really understand what exactly we were asking for and how this is a new product that we've never used before that really does fit the guideline of the contingency fund in that it is to promote new visitation.
Any aldermen have any questions at this time?
Yeah.
Mr. Milton?
Rachel, I had a couple questions. Who is Wisdom?
It's a company that is a need-based behavior company that analyzes consumer insights. They are actually based out of Springfield.
Do you have their bios of their history?
Yes, and they were, that information was included in the contingency application.
Okay, I read through that and I didn't see much. Did they, have they done this before?
Yes. And we have researched many, many, many companies like this and have never seen to this level what a company can do to really package everything together that we've been looking for. And I will tell you, we have spent hours and hours on the phone with Wisdom and Jerry Henry. And Jerry Henry said this is the best thing we could do and the coolest product that he's seen out there.
Okay, because my next question sounds like...
And they're going to be working collaboratively on the project.
With Jerry? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it sounds like that's what Jerry does. So we're asking for the $75,000 out of the Branson's contingency fund.
Mm-hmm.
Is this, and I don't know if we've heard back from the other request for $75,000 for the other program.
What other program? That we just requested one contingency for $75,000 from the city of Branson.
A meeting or two ago, is this that same program?
Mm-hmm.
So we left that meeting saying that we were going to see if TCD would do a cost share on this.
And the answer from the TCD was no. They provide the funding for all research. All the research that we provide to give to you. We reached out to Derek Smith and his answer was no, that they felt like it was not their place to do this special project, that they would refer it off to the city.
And so if it's not their place, then why would it be the city's place?
because it's for the betterment of the community, so everyone can market it more efficiently and spend their dollars more efficiently rather than just throwing them in the wind. I mean, you have data that backs up all the decisions that you make, and you know that you're targeting the right persons. It just makes the ROI and the efficiency so much stronger.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I just don't know why that wouldn't be a TCD concern also.
Randy Brashears is here tonight with the TCD, so he might want to speak to that. I'm not sure. I hate to put him on the spot, but Derek Smith was the one that specifically said no. As far as research goes, we pay for all of it, and they felt like it was a point for us to go to with contingency dollars and fill out an application for that, and that's what we did.
I don't know if I want to put Randy on the spot.
He's pretty far down in that chair right now.
I know he's gotten lower since we started talking.
Well, I mean, I think that's why he came, so.
I'm just thinking if the TCD doesn't see the value in funding it, then I think it begs the question, why the city?
And I'll speak for myself, obviously not Derek, but the process, again, looking at funding on how that works, we typically use the city as we work hand in hand together, but the TCD picks up a lot of other extra expenses, and this is more of a research-based funding that can be used there as opposed to a marketing tool that we would then put in place. So if we use this for research, then we can maybe use that to provide marketing information to move forward and how we can use that, but typically the research is provided through the city and those funding dollars that the city has.
Randy, I'm sorry, we needed to identify you too.
Randy Brashears.
And your address?
196 Barnes Lane.
Thank you.
Yep.
If the city paid the full $75,000, who would own the data?
Yeah, the data would be shared within the community, so it would be fully shared with everyone.
Yes, so the idea would be that we would, as soon as we have these personas built, we would introduce all of those personas and give the community the tools to go out and market their products specifically to those personas. So if you are the Dinosaur Museum and you have a budget of $5,000, this will be very scalable, that you can use your $5,000 in the most specific way to target the customer that's coming to you. And then you can take that to a level of a Solar City or a Dolly Parton Stampede or one of our Titanic or one of our drivers, and you can also make that is also scalable to that portion of a marketing budget. So really, I mean, I think it's very exciting that we can really dive deeper than we've ever done in a time where we don't have the funds that we've had in the past. We're not going to have those funds in 2021 either. Everyone keeps saying, oh, we can't wait for 2021. Well, everybody budgets based on 2020. So we've got to do what we can do right now to make it better. We just can't sit and wait and see what happens. I mean, that's not what our organization's about. We're about what's the next move. And so that's why we filed for the contingency, and that's why we think it's a good plan. And if we didn't, we wouldn't have brought it to you.
And I agree with everything you just said. Randy, what?
Are you finished? I'm sorry.
He still had a question.
Did the TCED MOC look at this?
The MOC has been established. First meeting is 2 weeks from Thursday.
Okay.
So the MOC has been established. First meeting is there, but it went through the DMC, which is now the MOC, kind of switching over, and what other acronym you want to throw out there. But so yes, through the DMC, through the TCD, and again, in the situation we're in, this is an incredible use of marketing dollars. We've been talking about, what happens if we do pull another $400,000, $500,000 marketing plan even for the fall. And you'll recall what happened was we spent about $1.8 million in late February, early March, and then got shut down. So what happens if that happens again? Even if we have some funds, which are running at about 55% right now, which I think is an incredible, testament to the city and the economy and the country. But this is an incredible use of dollars that can, because people do have some expendable cash that they could use, and they can scale it to wherever they want. So it's a pound for pound, this is the most effective thing that can be done in the short term that helps the whole community.
Sure, and I completely agree. I know when, I'm not sure who it was that gave us a demonstration of that, that's extremely valuable. And that will be accessible to all businesses within the district, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alderman C.
So probably for Rachel. So this product or tool, is it just now hitting its stride? Has it been used over how many years?
Yeah, so really just in the last year has this specific type of technology came out. So we have been using to basically figure out all of our numbers with Jerry Henry for several years, starting in 2008. We switched to a new platform where we ping cell phone data instead of doing it all the traditional ways of all of the surveys and all of the extrapolating the data and all of that to get to a certain number. We were actually pinging actual cell phones and then pulling out those local devices that obviously were not visitors. So we had criteria for that. We've been doing that. We've presented that several times at different board meetings and at that June work study session. But so this just takes another step. This takes a step into what is that person doing with that device? So do we know where they live? No. Do we know what their phone number is? No. But we do know that they are on their phone for X amount of hours or minutes per day. They are looking at these particular apps, and we know whether or not that device has been in the Branson market. So we can very strategically develop campaigns for that particular visitor to come back, or this particular visitor that looks just like this visitor to come for the first time. So we really, really believe that this is as I am constantly tasked more than anything to get new visitors here. I mean, that's what I hear more than anything from anyone. So this is what we have really researched and come to the conclusion that could be our best option right now. And the cool thing too about this is we're going to pull all of 2019 data, and then we'll have all of 2020 data, and that's going to look totally different too. 2019 was our very, very best year that we ever had. We will have a normal best year, and then we can compare it to what happened after COVID started. Who came first? Who were our customers? Who came that were new? How do we target in a new way? How do we focus on sending the right message, the right content to the right person at the right time?
Okay, so last question, are you going to be able to plug this into COVID behavior
Yes.
and patterns?
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's another main reason to go forward with this.
Okay.
I feel like Siesta Key. I've got so many questions. The issue of VPN here, does that block this program? There's virtual private networks that are out there on the cell phones now. Mozilla offers it for $5 a month. Does it block this type of intrusion? I'm not going to call it intrusion, but it is when you're going into somebody's.
So you would have to go into each individual app and turn it off.
Yeah, interesting. Just a little bit of history lesson. This stuff is in the public domain. The city owns the website. TCED rents it for $1 a year. That was part of our agreement. For years, TCED did all the research, and City of Branson didn't get involved. So I'm just trying to give some historical perspective for the investment of dollars. Because the first year, we put about $250,000 into research that Ed and I signed checks for the CVB. This also should be probably part of the cooperative agreement, Chris and Stan, the stuff that we're coming up with for the new CVB contracts. Items like this need to be addressed within the scope of that. And I think it's a great idea. I just have questions about how this data is going to wind up being used and who's going to have access to it. Like I say, if you go into Larry and my cell phone and we're doing something, where does that data land and who owns it? And how can that be used?
Yeah, so my answer to that would be that the community would own it. So just like the new dashboard tool that you have, that you can go on to the 3 separate links and look at all of the information in real-time data, we'll also incorporate the personas and how those personas change by season, by persona type for each season. So even say we get 10 personas built out of this, and those sort of personas will look different for fall than they'll look for spring, or they'll look for Christmas, because that's a different, or for summer, because that's a different visitor. So as we get that data into our office and analyze it and make sure that we're good with it, we will also provide an additional link onto that dashboard, and we will have all of that data there readily available in real time for anyone to use in the community that signs up for a portal login, and that does not have to be specifically a chamber member.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for doing this research, getting this. I think as far as bang for the buck, it's something for the community, and getting ahead of it now is great, because yes, 2019 was a good year, but the best part of 2019 was fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. So if we can get ahead of that right now, that's great. So thank you for getting out there.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, would you please vote? Yes, 5 present, passed. Milton, yes. Whitus, yes. Say, yes. Skanes, yes. Simmons, yes. Running out of breath. Item 12.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5847, an ordinance accepting the terms of an agreement with current member cities of the Tri-Lakes Regional Biosolids Coalition to form the Tri-Lakes Biosolids Joint Municipal Utility Commission and authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with a staff report from Mike Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. The cities of Branson, Hollister, Forsyth, Reed Spring, Kimberly City, Rockaway Beach, Galena, and Sparta are current members of the Tri-Lakes Regional Biosolids Coalition and have recently worked to finalize terms of an agreement to form the Tri-Lakes Joint Municipal Utility Commission. The purpose of this agreement is for the listed cities to assume ownership and continue operations and maintenance of the existing biosolids drying facility, which are based at the Branson Cooper Creek wastewater treatment plant, with additional equipment at the Branson Compton Drive treatment plant and the City of Hollister's wastewater treatment plant. These facilities are utilized to meet the biosolids processing needs for the member cities. The existing drying facility construction was officially completed in 2015. During the first 5 years of operation, Taney County has been the owner of the facility, but assumes no operational responsibility and also not responsible for cost of operations. A county ownership was a requirement to meet guidelines of the Missouri Department of Natural Resources grant that was used in conjunction with matching funds from the county sewer sales tax to construct the facility. Under the guidelines of the MDNR grant, the county agreed and still desires to transfer ownership responsibilities to the member cities. Formation of the members' Joint Municipal Utility Commission must be accomplished prior to the transfer. The commission, or the JMUC as it's called, agreement has been reviewed by the city's attorney, Chris Lebeck, and the Tri-Lakes Biosolids Coalition, representing attorney Lee Ganaway. Following the formation of the JMUC, member representatives making up the commission will hold a public meeting to elect officers and officially form the JMUC. Each member city will have a primary and alternate representative appointed by each city's Board of Aldermen. Each member city has one vote on items being considered by the commission. The JMUC will continue to collect fees from the members utilizing the facility for drying their biosolids based on rates established by the commission from actual cost of operations and processing. Those rates will be adjusted on an annual basis to assure revenues are adequate to cover costs. Same process that's in place now. The Commission will acquire all biosolids equipment and facilities currently owned by Taney County. The Commission will continue with operational contracts with the City of Branson and the City of Hollister to operate and maintain the biosolids equipment located at their respective locations. The City of Branson will also continue to perform administrative and financial management for the facilities. The Commission will also have the ability to utilize other qualified professional service providers to provide these services if it's a benefit and it's a savings to the members. A lease agreement currently exists with Taney County, between Taney County and the City of Branson, as the biosolids facility is located at the Cooper Creek wastewater treatment plant on City of Branson property. The lease document will be transitioned to the JMUC. Staff will bring an operations agreement and a lease agreement to the Board of Aldermen for consideration at a future meeting. Member cities will continue to pay a unit price for each ton of material which they have processed at the facility. The transition from the current ownership and operations has no impact on the operational cost. Currently, the cities of Branson and Hollister are paid through the coalition for the actual cost of labor and materials to operate the facilities. This will be changed to the Commission. Should the member cities ever elect at any time to dissolve the JMUC, the agreement includes terms for disposition of the equipment. The cities of Branson and Hollister have first right of refusal to obtain the equipment that's located at their facilities. The biosolids facility building at the Cooper Creek plant would be surrendered to the City of Branson under this agreement if it was to be dissolved. Staff recommends approval of the Tri-State Biosolids Joint Municipal Utility Commission contract to allow the City of Branson to become a co-owner of the facilities and to continue in participation with the drying program. Staff recommends approval of the bill.
You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5847. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Just real quick, Mike, the payments go to JMUC, is that right for this? That's the group that will receive the payments from the participating municipalities? Yeah. And obviously, do we know how many board members Branson would have and how they're appointed? And
each member city has one board member and an alternate if that board member is not available. So there are 8 members that make up the board currently.
When it breaks down, who pays for it?
The Joint Municipal Utility Commission will take care of those costs. Right now, the coalition takes care of that.
Okay, I got you.
And those funds are generated by the rates that are paid by the members.
Okay, thank you, buddy.
All right. Any other questions? JMUC, right?
Yes.
All right.
It's an appropriate name for it, isn't it?
JMUC.
Okay. Please vote. Five aldermen present. Yes, 5. Passed.
Thank you.
Voting yes, Milton, Whitus, C., Skanes, and Simmons. Item number 13. Madam Clerk, please provide the introduction for this item.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5848, an ordinance approving the employee wellness plan for City of Branson employees to complete in 2021 for tier determination for discounted medical insurance in 2022.
Understand we have a report from HR Director Jan Fisher.
Mayor, members of the board, just kind of as a refresher, we offer medical insurance for our employees. They get automatically they get a 70% discount on the cost of their insurance. In 2012, we implemented a wellness program that enables employees to gain that other 30% off on their medical insurance premiums. And so what we're doing tonight is we're renewing that. We're bringing that back to you for approval. We've made some minor changes from 2019 where we had three primary elements of the wellness plan. The first element is being nicotine-free or completing the coaching, cessation coaching, completing a health risk assessment, and then adhering to some biometric standards that were recommended by Cox Health. That's the part that we're kind of going to forego for 2021, simply because of the advent of COVID and the availability for the coaching and staff to be able to get the coaching done on a timely basis. We've had a few challenges in 2020, so we decided to forego that for 2021. And then the third element is to establish or maintain a relationship with a primary care physician by having a physical done on an annual basis. For that, we've established a tier system, tiers 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 is the top tier where you get 100% discount on your employee-only base plan medical insurance. And then tier 2 is where you get an 85% discount. Tier 3 is where you don't participate at all, or you use nicotine and don't go through the cessation, that kind of thing. So that's our wellness plan renewal for 2021 for discounts in 2022. We do it kind of a year in advance. So I stand here for any questions, and staff recommends approval.
You've heard the first reading of Bill 5848. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Yes, sir. Jan, what are any cost savings because of COVID-19 for people unable to participate in any part of this wellness plan? Obviously,
there's actually we designed the wellness plan to have no cost whatsoever to employees to begin with.
okay. That's the basis. Thank you.
Any other questions? Please vote. Five yeses, 5 present. Passes. The yeses are Milton, Whitus, C, Skanes, and Simmons. Item number 14, Madam Clerk, could you please provide the introduction for this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5849, an ordinance amending Chapter 86, Section 123 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to helmet requirement while operating a motorized bicycle. Sorry.
I have a staff report from Chris Lebec.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board.
Slap yourself with your mask?
This
We got
is
a mask injury over here. It sounds like.
workman's comp. Mayor, this is one of the few things that came out of our legislative session, and that is they basically repealed the requirement that you have to wear a helmet while riding a motorcycle, and then made that requirement filter down to the political subdivisions, us being one of those. So all this is a cleanup to bring our city code in line with the new state law that doesn't require helmets. That goes into effect August 28th. So first read today, second read August 25th. And then we are not doing anything that state law does not allow us to do. So staff recommends approval.
Thank you. You've heard the first reading of Bill 5849. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Is there a second? Anyone in the audience wishing to discuss this item? Any alderman wishing to speak to this item? Sadly, we vote for no helmets.
Yep.
Vote, please.
Do we still have to wear them to council meetings?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yes, 5 present. Voting yes, Milton, Whitus, C, Skanes, and Simmons. Item number 15. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5850, an ordinance amending Chapter 58, Section 125 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to prescriptions for methamphetamine precursor drugs.
Chris Lebec.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Same situation. This is another thing that came out of the recent legislative session. It was signed into law by Governor Parson on July 13th. And what it basically says, the relevant part of this law is that we can't have a prescription requirement for ephedra or what I call methamphetamine precursors. And it specifically excludes political subdivisions from maintaining or quote unquote enforcing such ordinance or regulation. So what we've done here, as you can see by the ordinance, is remove that prescription requirement from our ordinance. Everything else still stays intact. I think that's a concern that we can still regulate these kind of drugs, we just can't require a prescription. So unfortunately, this is another one where staff has to recommend approval because our hands are tied by our state government.
Begin with the staff, I've already done that. Heard the first reading of bill number 5850. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
Second.
Second.
There's a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any of the aldermen wishing to speak to this matter? Mr. Simmons.
I know we have no choice but to do this in order to comply with state law, but this is a terrible idea. We instituted this to solve a considerable problem in this specific area. We sit on two borders here almost, and I'm just very disappointed to see this. I can't vote against it because we have to comply with the law. But
it's hard for me standing here eating the dog food as a longtime state-level prosecutor dealing with methamphetamine labs, but it is what it is.
Any other alderman? Please vote.
Oh, Lord. Let's hope they don't mess any more things up in session.
Yes, 5 present, approved. Milton, yes. Whitish, yes. Say, yes. Gaines, yes. And Simmons, yes. I didn't leave anybody out, did I? Moving on to item number 16. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5851, an ordinance amending Chapter 78, Section 219 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to sunset clause of small wireless facilities.
Staff report, Chris Lebeck.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Back in 2019, the state of Missouri promulgated a set of rules that came out of the federal government with regards to small cell technology, basically design requirements where they can be located and certain restrictions upon the states and political subdivisions. This is a whole new set of rules because this was the new hot technology that our cell phone providers were going to roll out. With that new set of rules, there was a sunset provision put into the state statute that said that those would basically disappear in 2021. Well, as you and I both know, a lot has changed in those 2 years, specifically what we're dealing with today. So a House Bill 2120 extended the sunset of that provision to January 1st, 2025. So what this bill is asking the board to do is do the same for our ordinance dealing with small cell wireless facilities here in the city so that it expires at the same track with state law. I was just having a conversation with Mr. Foster, our IT director, because I was curious. We've had some interest in deploying 5G in the city. We've had some conversations with Verizon, but to date we don't have any active facilities here in the city yet. So hopeful that at some point we see that come to fruition here.
You've heard the first reading of bill number 5851. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Just clarification, Mr. Mayor. Chris, what you're telling us is the only thing we're doing is syncing our time frame with the state's time frame, and that's the only thing we're doing.
That's the only thing we're doing. If you were to vote this down, ultimately what would happen is our small cell wireless facilities portion of our city code would expire on January 1st, 2021. It would just disappear off our code book. So what would happen is if Verizon continued those conversations, came to the city and tried to put small cells up, they could basically do as they wish. So this again keeps that framework that we worked really hard on in 2019 in place. throughout until 2025.
Thank you.
Any other alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Mr. Clark isn't here still to speak to this matter, is he? Shh. Okay. All right. Please vote. Yes, 5. 5 present, passed. Voting yes, Milton, Whitus, C, Skanes, Simmons. Result of the vote, 5-0.
Change your name?
Under disbursements, item number 17. The next item is review of the disbursements from July 2nd, 2020 through July 29th, 2020, 27 days. Are there any questions regarding the disbursements that were presented to you earlier? I have a motion to acknowledge the receipt of the disbursements from the July 2nd through the July 29th, 2020
So moved,
days.
Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Now discussion. Please vote. Yes, 5. Passes. Larry Melton, yes. Jamie Whitish, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Skanes, yes. And Bob Simmons, yes. Reports time. Alderman Whitus.
This always gets me because I'm one of the newer guys and I'm always first, so I'll try. I just want to take this moment to welcome Julia to Ward 3 with me, so look forward to working with you at the next meeting.
Thank you. Alderman Simmons.
I have no report, Mayor.
Alderman Skanes.
I want to echo and thank you, Julia, for agreeing to serve. Many times we ask people to serve and they've turned us down or they will not participate because of the time that it takes. You will be dealing with a great bunch of people up here and great bunch of staff. You can always rely on them. You may not agree with them, but you can rely on them. And I appreciate your willingness to serve. And for the husband, a rack of ribs. That's an old joke around.
Yeah, but Alderman Milton.
Just a couple things. I also wanted to welcome you, Julia. Apparently you haven't been reading the news or you wouldn't have accepted this position. I would like to ask the question about Suddenlink, and I don't know if we could get maybe staff to look into this. We've been having problems with it personally at work and at home. And I've been hearing others have been having similar issues. And the first question that came up was, does the city of Branson we have a contract, I'm assuming, with Suddenlink, and they have exclusive rights. They've sold to Altice.
That's right.
And the service, and it's just really, really terrible. And so I didn't know if our contract was coming up, if there was something we could do to try to ask them to do a little more, or I don't know what the process is, but I'd like to get some information on that if I could. Thank you.
Alderman C.
Yes, Alderman Whitus and myself had spent some time with Julia, and we weren't asking her 10 questions or anything, but, welcome aboard, and I think she's going to fit in really well.
He was paid to say that.
Administrator Dobbins.
I'm sorry, Julia. Come aboard, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all of you who stayed tonight. The crowd tends to leave as the portions are covered. But I'm appreciating the work that we're doing. We have 2 new aldermen that have sat through a lot of training hours. Missouri Municipal League offered a program. They heard information in regard to sunshine, legal issues, all kinds of discussions and examples for Class 4 cities of our size and function. I appreciate the time that they spent trying to understand more about this job. It's a hard job representing our wards. And each of the wards has 2 representatives. And now Julia fills out our Ward 3, and I appreciate you coming on. Julia obviously is a part of the ward. She lives in the Point Royale area with Jamie in the Country Bluff area. I know they're looking forward to trying to resolve the issues that Country Bluff seems to have, and that's their job, trying to help make sure that stays on the forefront. But I encourage you to seek, and if you have any questions, we have a great staff. I'll even say this in public. They're a great staff that work hard for this city. They're public servants, and they do a good job. We've got some time coming up where we'll get results, and the face coverings. It takes 14 days for someone to really get through the period, and then you've got a few more days after that to try to get some records. But I'm hearing very positive information from other areas that have gone to mask and gone to face coverings, and the reduction in the number of positive cases is, if you all have been following it all, we're over 600 positive cases for Taney County now. And that's quite a change from 9 that was only less than 2 months ago. So the process is to try to slow what's happening with this virus down. I encourage us all to get behind it and to focus on helping people see that they're helping us. I loved it. I went to a site where people were wearing face coverings, and they thanked me for wearing a face covering because I was protecting them. And likewise, I thanked them back because they were protecting me. And there's been a lot of positive, good things happen out of this. And later on, we'll have some additional data. We're hopeful that we'll have that in the next week or so, data that shows that there's a large number of people that are now coming here because we have an ordinance in place. At this point in time, that's the only comments I have. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That was quick. Second.
Well, you didn't let me say my whole piece. And there's a second. All right. Is there a call for a vote? Yes, there's a call for a vote. Thanks, Dan. Yes, 5 present. We are adjourned.
Good night, everybody.